Obesity costs the NHS £6.5 billion a year in England alone. And some people say that the NHS shouldn't spend more on obese patients. They should pay for their own treatment.
Well, Dr Chris Van Telken is an NHS doctor. He's also an associate professor at UCL and the author of Ultra-Processed People. And he says that making people pay is shaming those who have simply bigger bodies. While weight loss expert Dr Eva Orsman says that obese patients should pay for any medical treatment that is obesity-related. Let's start with you. Is that because, perhaps I can put it this way, in a rather puritanical way, you think that people who are obese or who are overweight, it's kind of their fault? It's their choice?
No, it's just not their choice or their fault. But we need to incentivise people. We need to also give the personal responsibility. We need to teach people how to eat, how to change their lifestyle and actually come to a permanent solution, not just a temporary solution. Also, we need to remember these are very new drugs. We don't know the long-term side effect profile. This has been used for the treatment of type 2 diabetes, and we know that type 2 diabetes alone takes 15 years of life expectancy. And part of that reason it takes 15 years of life expectancy because the drugs that we are using for the treatment of type 2 diabetes also come with very heavy side effects.
You're making multiple points there. I mean, the fact of the matter is this drug has been licensed for use, so it's fair to assume that it is safe.
No, we have... In previous years, all these weight loss drugs have subsequently come off the market. There have been a number of drugs over the years, and they have always taken off the market because of the side effect profile. And already, the side effect when people start these drugs are basically nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. They're quite serious, and also low energy levels. This is what my patients tell me in my clinics.
Well, that is a separate argument from the one that we're trying to have here, which is, if you do have the treatment, you're saying that you should pay for it. Why?
Yes, because I think you would take a different, personal responsibility, and you would also be more incentivized to actually do lifestyle changes. The fact that you just take a drug that makes you feel nauseous and you eat less because you are on the drug, that doesn't mean that you do healthy lifestyle choices and you make your ways permanently.
OK, Dr Chris Van Telken, Rosie seems very pleased with her 7-stone weight loss. She doesn't seem to have any problems with side effects. But should everybody like Rosie be paying for this because it isn't motivating?
No, that argument is not just unethical, it's also scientifically inaccurate, and it's economic nonsense. So at the moment, people who live in larger bodies are forced to do so. They're primarily already disadvantaged groups. They're often people on low incomes who can only afford the kind of industrially processed, ultra-processed foods that we know lead to weight gain. And so if we put a further tax on those people, we not only think it's wrong, so I've signed up to all kinds of ethical codes as a doctor, there's a General Medical Council Code of Good Practice. We can't have prejudice against any patient, not for the colour of their skin, nor for the shape of their body. But we also know it doesn't incentivise people. We're absolutely certain, there's loads of data, that when we shame people in any way, it exacerbates weight gain.
But we're not talking about shaming people, we're talking about giving people education.
But we're not. We're talking about asking people, one group of patients, to pay for a treatment that no one else has to pay for. And that is a form of economic shame and it's a form of social shame. And we know, all the data says that this will make the problem worse. Doctors already show more prejudice against people who live in larger bodies, against people with obesity, than any other group, than any other ethnic group.
You think it could even become racist and misogynistic? So what do you mean by that?
What we have to think about is who is affected by the obesity crisis. Primarily, we're all affected, but it's the people who gain the most weight are people who are forced by economic circumstances to eat this food. Policies that say groups who live with obesity must pay...
But how does this drug change the way they are eating? Because the whole thing...
To answer the question about racism, if we have a policy that discriminates against people who live in larger bodies, that will necessarily discriminate against women, people of colour and other disadvantaged groups.
Yeah, but how is this drug helping long-term? Because we're basically saying people should stay on this drug forever.
That is exactly what we're saying. I completely agree with you, Eva. Until we change the food environment, nothing will change. So there is no intervention for weight loss that works other than surgery or these drugs.
I mean healthy eating, and educating people and empowering people to take responsibility. But we also need to give people support, so not just throwing them drugs. We are spending over 10% of NHS budget for treatment of type 2 diabetes, which is purely a lifestyle disease.
Asking people with low incomes to pay for medical
treatment. But this is not just low income. Obesity is affecting all social economic groups. And there's a lot of people who eat healthy food and become obese purely because they don't know calories in, calories out, and the education system. This is another way of just... basically, as a doctors, we should treat the cause, not the symptom.
Okay.
We are treating the symptom at the moment.
Can I just say, use the word empowering. It doesn't empower people who are struggling with a medical problem to demand that one group pays for a medication. It's unethical.
You see obesity as a medical problem, not as something that's a consequence of a bad diet.
Obesity, the data are so clear. Obesity is a collision of genetic risk factors plus a food environment.
Our genetics has not changed over the last 50 years.
Absolutely.
Our environment has changed.
What I would ask you is, if this is costing 40 million, but obesity costs the NHS 6.5 billion.
Imagine if we put this money in the education and support for long-term prevention and care.
Do people really need education to know that overeating or eating highly processed food is a bad idea?
No, it's just
then why do we have so many people who are obese? Why not give them the jab for proportionally a tiny amount of money, 40 million compared to 6.5 billion? You can save their lives as well as saving the NHS budget.
First of all, the side effect profile and risk what comes with years to come is one thing that is totally unknown. We are telling people to stay on this drug forever, which is unsustainable. Really, we need people to actually do permanent changes. We need to teach them what to eat, how to compose the daily diet. At the moment, people are eating a lot of...
What if they ignore the lessons that you want to teach them and they stay overweight? Surely then there's an argument for a quick fix.
But imagine the amount... what we could do with this if this money was actually spent on prevention and education.
OK, can I ask
These arguments are theoretical. The economic case is absolutely watertight. Yes, we need to do more research on these drugs. There's all kinds of things we don't know. But they will save money. We have enough data. And the drugs have been through a stringent regulator, which none of Eva's proposals have been.
Can I ask Dr Chris? Sorry, Eva, can I ask Dr Chris? A lot of people will agree with Dr Eva Osmond that obesity is simple. You get fat because you eat far too much, and then you need education to tell you not to eat so much. It's just, well, I mean,
it's not simple. It's environmental. There's multiple factors that affect. But the thing is that we are not teaching people what to eat. We are eating, for example, you look at the typical diet, people are eating bread, cereals, our food labelling is very unclear. There are multiple factors. People need education and they need specific advice and they need help.
What about Dr. Eva?
Sorry, we are throwing tablets, drugs to people.
Can I just pick up on a point you made at the very beginning? What do you make of her real concerns about the safety of this treatment?
I think there are legitimate concerns about these drugs. They will not work as well as the drug companies say. That is true. And the drugs shouldn't distract us from changing the environment, I agree. But education won't work. What we know about people who live with low incomes, and that's all of us, it's not just...
But you're talking all the time low income. It's not just low income.
We're in a cost of living crisis.
This is affecting across the board.
Excuse me, but what we know is that people in this country, the people who are affected, are unable to afford food. So we can educate people all we want. But they can't afford the data are really clear. You cannot afford to eat the foods that will promote a healthy weight. And also, once you've gained weight, it's terribly hard to lose it. And the only interventions that work are surgery or drugs.
The data you are referring is actually data supported by pharmaceutical companies. All these data is
entirely untrue.
It's entirely untrue. Actually made and supported by pharmaceutical companies.
That's not true.
This is what we are talking. This is the
culture.
I'm talking... Let's throw pill for every ill. We are already
about data
type
from the
2
Food
diabetes.
Foundation.
Type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease which can be reversed. We are not telling people if you...
Can I just... It is hard to lose weight. And if you're
absolutely...
very, very overweight,
this is why people need support and education, and we need a structure, not just throwing drugs. These are temporary solutions. This is not the solution forever.
All right, that's where we came in. That's where we came in. Obviously not a meeting of minds, but a very stimulating conversation. Burned off a few calories. Thank you.
Yes.
We did actually run a Twitter poll on this. What was the result of that? Here we go. We asked, should you have to pay for this particular treatment? 37% of you said yes, you should, but 63% of you said no, it should be free.
Can I just ask, before we leave it, your top tip, if you find yourself very overweight, what is your top tip, Dr. Eva Osmond?
Start increasing your fibre intake from vegetable-based food. So increase and eat cabbage, courgette, broccoli, start making homemade vegetable soups. Increase that and reduce your cereal-based food. That is number one, and you already get results.
What would your number one top tip be? No ultra-processed.
No, I have no advice for people who want to lose weight. They have my love, my support. They live in an environment that essentially forces them to be the weight they are. And frankly, we need to vote to regulate the industry that drives weight gain.
OK.
OK,
thank you both very much indeed. 7:36.